That is right, Adventure Wagon videos are back. Picking up from where we left off the last time, after finishing V2 of the Adventure Wagon, I went ahead and did a few other mods, which I had posted to my Instagram, but ever since then, I've been wanting more. And that's what we're going to cover in this video. Alright, as the title of this video suggests, we're going to be installing the Anderson Design Fabrication, or ADF, 2-inch lift kit. Now this kit comes with a few different parts that we need to install. This is our front lift spacer, so this will go in the front. This is a 2-inch tall spacer, as the name of the kit suggests. I'm also going to be keeping my 3/8 inch front leveling spacers as well, because for the rear, we're going to be installing these. When you're on the website and you order this kit, you'll notice for the rear you have 3 different height options. You have the regular 2-inch, you have a 2 3/8, which is also available on pretty much every other kit, and then you also have 2.5, which is what these ones are. The kit also comes with these. This is a trailing arm spacer that is also 2 inches tall. I have the 1-inch in there currently, and that has to do with where the wheel is towards the front or the back of the wheel well. And of course, this entire kit comes with all the hardware needed to install everything. And with that being said, why don't we get into this install? So to start out the process on the front, we need to remove our front sway bar links, which is no issue with these ADF relocation brackets. They're super handy, and it's easy enough to get off with an impact.
Next level.
Once we get that end link swung and out of the way, we can move on to the strut itself by first removing the ABS wire, which wasn't as easy as I would have hoped. Alright, I was concerned that I would run into this, and I kind of wish I had recorded the other side, but this ABS wire is not gonna come off of the strut. I could, cut the bolt, I could cut the bracket, I could heat it up or something like that, but I'm afraid if I do any of that, I will damage this ABS wire, and I'm not sure that's something that I want to replace right now or try to replace, so I'm going to do the lazy way, which was my original plan and something that I didn't want to do, but I'm going to undo this ABS wire bracket up here. You can't see it right now, but I'll put some B-roll in. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the spring compressors that I rented. I'm going to compress the spring as much as I can, and then I'm going to undo the top hat bolts. I'll probably loosen the bottom strut bolts as well for a little bit of extra play, and then I'll lower the suspension as much as I can and try and tilt the strut out. I don't know if that's necessarily going to work. I'll tilt the strut out, and then I will replace the spacer without fully removing the strut from the vehicle. Ideally, you would remove your brake line, remove your ABS wire, unbolt the bolts, and take the entire strut out. That's what you should do, but we can't do that. So we're going to try it this other way. So we're going to go ahead and carry on with this install. So for the front, you can either undo the bottom bolts first, or you can undo the top hat nuts first. It's really up to you. Because of the method that I was trying, it's much easier to do the top hat nuts first. When you do take the strut out, though, it's advised to leave one of the top hat nuts just threaded on a few threads, just so that way the strut doesn't fall out of the car onto you or onto anything else that might not be a good situation to be in. Now, as you can see, when I tried doing what I was talking about earlier, it definitely didn't work, so I still needed to remove the strut as best as I could. I went ahead and undid the lower strut bolts, which did take a bit of finesse, but compared to when I did my coilovers years ago, the tools that I have now make life so much easier. Once I got the nuts off of the bolts, I threaded them back on just a little bit so that way I could tap them out with a hammer. That way you're not going to ruin the bolts and ruin the threads on the bolts at all. So you got to make sure you do that if you're going to hammer out bolts. For that top bolt, you do kind of have to turn it a little bit with the impact. That is a hand bolt, and as you can see with the hub moving forward and backward, that adjusts the camber for the wheel when you take it for an alignment. So you do need to turn it a certain way. It needs to be in a certain position in order to slide out easier. I then went ahead and took a pry bar and pried the strut away from the knuckle, which took a little bit of finessing, and I did have to try and get it out with my hands. It took a little bit, but eventually I got it loose and free. Now the only thing holding the strut to the car is the ABS wire still, so I had to sort of move it down and tilt it out like this, and then go in and remove my top hat spacer. So in order to take the lift kit out, you're not going to have to deal with this if you have no lift installed at all. For the 2-inch lift from ADF, you just put your spacer on top of the top hat and you just bolt it on to your stock studs. For me, because I had the 1-inch installed, I needed to first remove the 1-inch spacer, and I did talk to ADF, and they do recommend that you replace your top hat studs with stock top hat studs. However, I couldn't find top hat studs on their own. You could only buy the top hat as a whole, and I wasn't interested in doing that. But eventually I did get the 1-inch spacer removed. With the height of my lift, I was able to reuse the bolts from the 1-inch spacer. I probably should have got shorter bolts, but I was on a bit of a time crunch, so I needed to get this done as quickly as possible. And I've driven around on it for a little bit now, and I don't have any problems with it at all, with those bolts being as long as they are. Once the spacer is installed, we can go ahead and put the strut back in the car. You need to align it with the top hat holes first up in the engine bay. You may need someone to help you. I had my dad help me out with it. And once when we got it aligned, I was able to tighten the nuts down. After the nuts are tightened, you want to go ahead and torque them to about 19 foot-pounds. It is a bit of a range, but that's sort of in the middle. Once when those are torqued, you can go ahead down below and torque the bottom bolts to 115 foot-pounds. Again, that was a middle ground of a range. Once that's done, I put the wheel back on, I set the car down, and the front was done. Jesus Christ. For the rear, I'm not going to go over everything because it is generally the same, but I needed to remove my end links again, but they were just corroded and rusty, so I needed to remove them by a different means. You also need to remove your brake line from your rear shock, but fortunately for me, when my 1-inch lift kit was installed, the shop went ahead and put these zip ties on, so it was much easier to remove the brake line. You also need to take this cover off that covers the rear struts. This is right behind the back seat, so if you fold the seats down, take a trim tool, you can take these covers off fairly easily. And then you repeat the same process as the front. When you go to take the strut out, you also want to remove the bolts for your trailing arms. We're going to be installing trailing arm spacers anyway, so you're going to need to do this by unbolting the trailing arm. You'll get a little more articulation helping to get that strut out, especially since it's going to have a taller lift. To put the trailing arm spacer in, you want to jack up the hub, so the axle is sort of perpendicular, it's at 90 degrees, and that'll help you more easily align the trailing arm with the spacer, because those holes are a little bit difficult to see, especially under the car. I did my best here, and it did help a little bit, but I did need a flashlight in order to find the holes perfectly. Once you get one in though, it's a little bit easier to get the rest in, and especially once you have 2 bolts in, you have no problem getting in that last bolt. Once the bolts are in, you can go ahead and tighten those, and then, unfortunately I didn't do this in the video, but you can torque them to 65 foot-pounds. Then with that, you put the wheel back on and the lift kit is done. That is it for this week's video, guys. I hope you all enjoyed. The Adventure Wagon is looking great. The install went pretty okay. I mean, we did run into some issues, but that is the nature of modifying your car. You're always going to run into something. If you like this video, go ahead and leave a like. Also, leave a comment down below. I love reading your comments and responding to them as well. Go ahead and share this video with your friends. Maybe they want to lift their Subaru and they want to know the process of it. This will be a great video for them. If you want to see more of my content, because there is more to come, go ahead and subscribe. This has been Kyle, and I will see all of you in the next video.